And as you can see, we've been joined by Danni now. So,
hello.
Hi.
I worked it out. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well. I was just boring the guest because there's a guy called Andrew and a couple others who turn up very promptly. So I just took them through some of my backgrounds and so on. And I was just telling them about how I met you. And that was because I wrote the book, 101 Lessons I Taught My Son. Not being a professional writer, I think the best thing to do was to find myself some self-publishing. I didn't want to go through the whole thing myself because that's not what I do. And your name came up as someone who was helping people get their books out there, someone with credibility. And so that's how I made contact with you about the book. Just to backtrack a little bit, let's just give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your company, what you do, and let the people out there hear from you.
Okay, hello. Thank you for inviting me to People Talk Paul. I'm really glad and pleased. So my name is Danni Blechner. I'm an author, book journey mentor, founder of a company called Conscious Streams Publishing. We work with authors from literally all over the world to help them to get their powerful message and story out there in the form of professional books. So behind me here, if you can see, are just some of the 77 books that we've published now over the last 4 years. Here's Paul's book, 101 Lessons I Taught My Son, one of our first books. The reason I set this up is because I'm absolutely passionate about providing a platform for unseen, unheard authors to really get their story out there. I think it's really important for us to tell our stories authentically, and so that we can educate, inspire, entertain, and empower for generations to come.
Wonderful. Danni, look, for me, the story really begins with me being a first-time writer, first-time author, looking for someone to publish a book. I'll make no bones about the fact that at that time, there were a lot of scare stories about, people birthing books and collaborations to bring books to. So for me, it was very important to find someone who could publish my book and I would have some confidence, not just in the integrity of the person. Ooh, relax.
Sorry about that.
but also in
okay, we will sort that later. That's all good.
the quality of what they would put out.
Yeah.
And so I guess the first question I'd like to ask you is, how did you get into this self-publishing, this whole publishing? How did you get into it?
That's a really interesting question, actually. Sorry, I'm sharing this out for you, Paul. I've managed to find you on Facebook now, so I'm sharing it out. So how did I get into it? I got into it because I've always wanted to be an author from a really young age. I remember being asked, what do you want to be? And you're at that age where you don't have those limitations thrown upon you. So I always said, I am going to be an author. But the plan was in my mind as a 4-year-old was when I'm 40 and retired, I was going to sit at home and write books all day. So my passion came from wanting to be a writer, having that passion. That was my love. So I never thought about, setting up a publishing company. So it wasn't until I published my first book in 2014 now. I was absolutely passionate about it. It's a collection of stories written by women. It's about exploring limiting belief systems that we may have about ourselves, love, relationships. And I really wanted to do these women justice, and the stories for men as well. So coming about setting up this publishing company was through, wanting to really publish my own book. It wasn't the book I thought I was going to write. And so I did what they tell you to do, and that's, I got a book written by Harry Bingham called Getting Published. And the very first port of call is you write a query letter to get an agent. And I don't know if you looked into this when you went to look at this, the publishing route. So I was looking at traditional publishing. So a query letter is like a 1-page CV or 1-pager about you, your book, and a little bit about, why you've written it or your marketing plan, which I didn't really have at the time. So I just wanted to be an author. So I sent this off, and then I literally stopped writing, and I waited and I waited and I waited. And then all the letters came in. I say all the letters, Paul, it was like 2. And it was from agents. Really love your writing capability, really witty, really funny. This is quite trendy at the moment. Or it might be we're not looking for this sort of book. A lot of the time it was we're looking for somebody with more of a following or marketing plan. And as I said, I didn't know. What do you mean following? I was just literally, I just want to publish a book. Thought that was your job. But they asked for a lot more. And so then I did what they tell you not to do. And that's to approach traditional companies like HarperCollins, Random House, Penguin. I knew they were going to turn me down, but I think there was something about that rejection. I just wanted to keep going. So I did that, and then I literally waited and I waited and I waited again. And then I got one reply, and of course we're only looking for authors who have representation. We don't take on unsolicited authors. But it was that great epiphany moment for me where I realized that whilst I was waiting for a response, I'd stopped writing. And actually I wasn't waiting for a response, I was waiting for validation. Do you know what I mean? I was waiting for permission. I was waiting for these like higher echelons or these like commercial traditional companies to say, you know, yes, you're good enough, the story matters, you matter, this journey matters, let's make this happen. But if I knew that these stories were worthy and can impact people, and I know they have because I've spoken to people who've read it, people have contacted me and said what impact it's had. And by hook or by crook, I just had to set up my own company, did it myself. And just organically, I had people coming to me saying, you know, how did you manage to get that, you know, pressed in the Voice? Or how did you manage to get your book in Waterstones? And how did you manage to publish your book? And so I was connecting them with all these different freelancers I'd met along my journey, and then started to help them to publish their book. And I realized, hold on, my background, as you know, is teaching, you know, work with young people, mentoring, that's my passion, that's my love, alongside writing and literature. So I thought, fuse the two together. If the door is not there for us, that's not the time to sit down and like, you know, hide under the table. That's the time to create our own door. So yeah, it really just came from that rejection, really, I think. I'm willing to do it.
That's great, because I do remember my path to so-called writing something and thinking to myself that it just seemed very stacked against the random person who wanted to publish something. It didn't seem very much like it was designed to allow the layman to have access to it. You know, all the things you talked about appeared to be obstacles in the way. But I do remember one of the conversations that I had with someone else who had published a book, and they were very much saying that probably the best thing to do when it comes to your own book is to stop worrying about whether it's going to sell. Stop worrying about, you know, do you have a following, and just get the book out there, because very much it may just turn out just to be a labor of love rather than, you know, you want to be on the bestseller list, you want to be a great world-renowned author. And that for me was the great thing about self-publishing, in that it gave you access to many more stories, which probably you wouldn't have heard before. So what was your first book that you actually wrote for yourself? Tell us a little bit about that.
Not the first book I published, but the first book I wrote.
The first book you wrote for yourself personally.
Okay. Oh, no one's ever asked me that. Thank you. Oh, it's funny you say that. The very first book, actually, I wrote when I was 10. And I wrote it for this young girl, because I used to be like one of these mentors in the school that looked after like reception kids. So we were all assigned a kid. And her name was Lucille. And I wrote a book, and I literally created the ISBN, the barcode. I glued it together. I made this. I'm not amazing. I think I was a lot better at art when I was younger. Now I'm just not. But I drew all these pictures, just took my my writing's messy. So I wrote my neatest writing. And I created these like little pop-up things. I don't know why I've still got it, because I'm sure I did give it to her. I remember giving it to her, but for some reason I've got it. So it's called Lucille and Lucille and Teddy's Adventures, I think. So it's based on it's just like a little fantasy story. But off the back of that, what I started writing before I wrote Mr. Wrong, which is my first published book, was a book that I'm still actually working on. I shelved it for a while. You know, 10 years ago I wrote it. I finished the first draft 10 years ago, but it's not ready. I need to keep coming back. It's writing nonfiction for me is a lot easier than, you know, creating something that's about adventure and fantasy, because you've got to think about plot and sequencing, characterization, all of that sort of stuff, message. So just to give you a little bit of I don't want to tell you too much, Paul, but it's based on this young girl, lives in South London. Her absolute love is art. She loves art. That's her gift. That's her passion. Her father passed away. She was really close to her dad. Her father passed away because he went back to the school to pick up her colouring pencils, because she'd left them at school and she can't sleep without having to draw. So against her mum's wishes, he picks them up, and unfortunately doesn't make it home. He dies in a car crash. And ever since then, her mother blames her for her father's death. She's neglected. She's not in a great situation at home. The mother's boyfriend isn't a particularly nice character. And somehow she revives her love of art. and she draws this image, massive big world on the wall, and she gets sucked into this world. And in this world, she actually gains her strength and understands her, gets to reclaim her own power in that world. That's what I'm going to say.
Lovely stuff. For everybody who's actually watching this on Facebook Live today, we're trying something slightly different. Danni's my only guest this week, which is fine. I'm sure we have more than enough to go on for. But I've also given you guys the opportunity to participate this week. The reason why I'm doing that is because when we did first of all post the link, Danni was coming on, there was such a great amount of feedback about people talking about not just the books they're reading now, but their favorite books. And if you'd like to pop into the feed, just take a look on my Facebook page. I'll post the link already, and I'll keep posting it until people either join or you don't join. But you know what? This is your great opportunity for you guys to jump in. So the details are there. Please, 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 please don't share the link outside. Yep, just keep it between us, because you know there are some weird people out there doing some strange things on Facebook. So I'm taking a little bit of a chance and just hoping that you guys are tight and we'll be able to keep it that way. So Danni, okay.
I can see the live now.
In one of your posts, you made the point that I was one of your very early authors.
Yes.
You're now, you know, I don't want to say old, I'd say long into your experience at helping people birth their books, which is a phrase I like to use. The question I was wondering is, do you reject many people?
It's the word reject, isn't it? Okay, we don't accept every single submission. I think there's a real lack of integrity. If I was to just accept everything, you see what I mean? So, for example, one of the big reasons I set this up was because when I was looking, you know, to self-publish my book after realizing the traditional publishing route wasn't going to work for me, there were all these companies out there, aka sharks, and they were charging like thousands and thousands and thousands for books that they. Do you know what I mean? You must have seen, you know what I'm talking about. You know, they hadn't read the manuscript and they're accepting it already. There's no care or value, and I'm about nurturing and caring, and you know, about helping the authors along the journey. Again, I'm not doing this because I like printing books. I'm doing this because I love literature. I love reading. I love books. I love the impact. Books to me, a lot, you know, knowledge, and knowledge is power as long as you apply it. So I want to create powerful products. So if somebody's come and their manuscript, number one, isn't in alignment with what we're about, because we're very much about publishing work that educates, inspires, empowers, and entertains as well. Entertainment is important. If it's outside of what, for example, crime fiction, it's not really, or horror, it's not really a genre that we're going to accept, but I may pass them on to somebody else. But then again, I might have an author who's written something whose message is in alignment with what we're about, but it's not quite there yet. It's not ready. So I might, number one, refer them to a book coach. Number two, give them a bit of some feedback. I can give them a short breakdown, or there's a paid service where we'll read it, we'll assess it, and we'll give them some constructive feedback. And number three, it's just, as I said, it's just not right. So those are the three main things. So I never look at it as like, reject, this is text, I know what that feels like. You know, this is not something that we're going to publish. It's, well, actually this works, this needs to be improved. It's not, we've got to be honest, it's not ready for publishing, you know? So I don't think, hey, Sherry, we don't accept everything, but yeah.
You know, I put the invite out there that people could join us, and I know Sherry Ann Dixon is trying to join us, so we'll keep going until that's done. And Andrew Roach also trying to join us. Look,
nice.
I guess the thing for me is about what first of all brought about your love for literature. Hi, Andrew, how you doing? What more about
my love for literature? How far does it go? I mean, I had a joke with someone about this on Facebook about, like, you know, romance was found in the library. That's just because I love books. I just remember my mom taking me to the library the first time, and I still have it now. I'm looking at, because we're going to talk about books, I'm looking at all these books now, and it's like, I sound like a real geek. But it's not, it's number one, just like the covers of the book that draw you in. the colours. For me as a kid, I loved reading. I was a very quick reader. You know, children's books, the fact that you can escape to a fantasy land, escape to magical lands, it just built my vocabulary. I had better vocabulary when I was 5 than I do now. I need to read more. You know, it just sparks your imagination. It's that I love. But then on the other side, you know, going into libraries, I remember my mum used to teach me about I went to go and see Serafina in the theatre. So she taught me a lot of stuff that kids at my age didn't really know, you know, Black South African politics, apartheid, all of that stuff, Steve Biko. And the library was a place where I could learn more about that, yeah? So I could pick out these books. And then I realised, like, the more I'm learning, the more knowledgeable I'm becoming. And then I can, you know, cross-reference it with something else I've read. And it's just been something that's, so even talking about it, you know, it's just a real interest for me.
Yeah, Andrew, you take yourself off mute so you can have a word or two with us.
All right, thanks for the thanks for letting me in.
Professional. I'm going to pretend I'm a professional and say, what made you call in today?
Well, the subject matter, you know, I think I concur with what Danny. I think hopefully I got your name right there. Yeah. In terms of, I remember, I grew up in an age where, you know, a library was somewhere where children could go and accompanied. I remember the first time, it must have been a old school teacher who said, oh, she's arranging after school to go into the library, asked permission from my mum. I mean, as Caribbean parents, you have to ask permission first. You can just say, I want to go there.
Yeah.
Got the permission, went, and, you know, it was just like, I thought it's like, for you, Paul, it's like watching your first Star Trek movie. It was like, being introduced into another world is like, great, you know, and able to go to the library. So it was just a place to really, my imagination, and like Danny was saying about my vocabulary, and you know, just the ability to be able to articulate yourself. Yeah. So yeah, it was a nice experience, and it, you know, I mean, I haven't been to a library in ages now. I don't know why they exist, but yeah, that was my introduction into the world of books, should they say?
Well, you know, I one of the reasons why this topic is so nice and I love it so much, and as I said in one of the posts, Danny, that, you know, books were my first true love. And, you know, I've told you guys endlessly that I grew up in Jamaica, and I had a very atypical upbringing. I just lived in a little house somewhere, went to a little local primary school. But when I went to high school, and any of my classmates who are listening will remember this teacher. We had a teacher called Miss Lee. She was an English woman who taught English literature and drama at our school. And I remember one summer, she said to us, doesn't matter what else you do for the summer, here is a reading list of books. Make sure you read as many of these books as possible. And that summer, I read some of the most incredible books outside of my school books. Because, you know, in school, we read books like Julius Caesar, Romeo and Juliet, To Kill a Mockingbird, Great Expectations, Pickwick Papers, blah, 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 blah. But on the reading list, you know, this was an English woman in Jamaica giving us books like A Woman Called Moses, The Pentagon Papers. The first time I read a book about Jason Bourne by Robert Ludlum, the Bourne Identity. And anybody who is attached to me on Skype knows that my Skype handle is jbourne3. Yep. Those books were like a travel agent. Yep. You know, Robert Ludlum's writing makes you feel like you're in the place you are. And because it was a spy book, you know, you had all these international destinations. And, you know, living in Spanish Town, Winter Pen, as I lived, there was no chance I was going to be going to Paris, to Morocco, to wherever the book was set. But books were like transportation. Yeah, they were like transportation. And the love that Miss Lee fostered in all of my class. You know, the last thing I'll say about Miss Lee is when we did the examination and failed, she wept. And she spent her own money to write back to the Cambridge place and said, you must have marked these kids' things wrong, because there's no way. And it turned out they remarked and most of them ended up passing.
No way.
Way.
That is a proper teacher.
But that was the love of literature that we got, and it's never gone. So I did ask everybody, and I'm going to ask you, Andrew, while you're still here. I'm going to ask you, what book are you reading? And I'm going to hold up the book I'm reading.
Read it.
Yeah, that's my list.
Yeah?
I read it.
This is the book that I'm reading. Andrew, what book are you reading?
Well, I've got two. I mean, I'm someone, people might attest to this. I end up starting quite a few books at the same time. So depending on at home, I might have a couple. On my journey to work, I might have a couple I'll take with me. So at the moment, there's two that I've just started. Here is one. Can you see that?
What's it called?
Got to tell us the name. We can't see it properly.
Can you see it properly?
Caribbean Mothers, Identity and Experience in the UK by Tracy Reynolds.
Yep. I mean, I like to read books as well as, some say, well, I'm not a Caribbean mother. Why am I reading like that? But, to get a different perspective, I mean, one of the criticism, in the diaspora, they say is that, a lot of single mothers. So just understanding their experiences and find out, how can we change that narrative? So that's one book. All right. I've just started to read it. So this is by T.C. Carey. It doesn't say in it, but it says there. Now there's the title. Can you see that? Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything more than yes. I see that. We saw it before, mate.
You can see the title.
Why are you showing off?
I'll leave that there for you to judge that. I mean, I got it probably about a year ago. He was, I'm not sure. I was at, I did a Black Panther being shown some or something. But what they like to do is get in obviously different people, and he was promoting his books. This was one of them. Not sure. All right, I'm not sure I was drawn to this particular one, but I got this. And just started reading it. I mean, I'll just give it. It says it's about we are living in a computer simulation that keeps us trapped by relentlessly feeding our minds with an illusion. That's part of what he said there. So I was okay. I mean, he signed it as well, so that was quite good. So those are two books I've got on the go now. Hopefully,
okay, thank you for joining.
Thanks a lot.
Danny,
nice contrast.
I think you mentioned 70 something, but how many books has Conscious Publishing now done?
Oh God, I think we're on 77. We've got 13 baking at the moment. We've just had a couple come out, so we've got. I'm excited about this one. It's so heavy. A sci-fi novel. Look at that. If you know Dion Heron, which I'm reading again, because this is the proof.
I know Dion. Yes.
The Mandari Chronicles. Look at that cover, beautiful sci-fi, absolutely amazing. 810 pages. We've got time on lockdown. So there's this one. We've got From Wedding Rings to Imperfect Dreams from Young Widow, came out on the 11th, and then we've got another poetry book, From Hindsight to Foresight. Should really know what it's called. Between Hindsight and Foresight, that's what it's called. So I think we're on about 77 with a couple baking. Yeah.
So I have to ask this. They ask parents this with their children, and parents laugh at this question. Do you have a favorite?
Oh God, I never have a favorite. It's hard. It's really hard.
101 lessons. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah. Apart from your book, obviously, 101 lessons. We're going to take that out of the runnings. I don't know. I have like favorite covers. I have favorite experiences with the authors in terms of journey, but in terms of a favorite book, it's a hard one. I mean, I would feel a bit wrong not plugging. Where is it? 1 second, I'm coming.
Okay, look, we have gentleman Michael. Michael is on the line. Michael, let me know if you want to speak and participate. I know you're on mute, both video and sound. Let me know. Oh, here he is. Hi, Michael. You're still muted. On YouTube.
Okay, Paul, you catch me on the words. I wanted to listen to the group and let's get the vibe. What I've heard so far just thrills my soul. Because books, reading, back in the day when It's one of my abiding memories is the name Stephen. Now, when I first read the name Stephen, it was always Stefan, because no one told me. You know, I'd never heard the word. You know, I never, because you don't know, you just read for yourself. So I'm just loving the fact that people like me just back in the day when we were coming, just read books.
Yeah.
And just read these things. Fantastic. I'm loving it.
Yeah, Danny, what was the book you went for?
Yeah, I went for my sister's book. This came out recently, actually, a few weeks, 3rd of April, Self-Care for Life in the City. It was meant to come out, I don't know if you can see it.
It's a bit bright.
Is it too bright? What's going on?
Yeah, well, later on, we can put it in the chat.
Yeah, it was meant to come out in May, obviously, which is now, but because of everything that's happened during lockdown, I thought it was really important just to get it out there. So it's about, you know, because we've been called to slow down, how to nourish your mind, body and soul in a fast-paced world. So it looks at food, nutrition, just slowing down, transformational breath she does. She's just brilliant. So that, I want to say that's my favorite book, but I love them all for so many different reasons. But at the moment, I would say it's a really important book right now. And I love the experience because obviously it was my sister. So hey.
I hear that. Before I go to Michael, I can see Michael is at biting on a bit. I'm going to say hi to Sherry. Sherry, look, nice of you to join us again.
Hey, Sherry.
For those who don't know, Diana, Sherry, what's your favorite book? What are you reading?
Okay, I'm reading this book that's called Sushi and Tapas. Sushi and Tapas. It's by, it's by the former Prime Minister of New Zealand called Helen Clark. And basically it's a story from women around the world about their relationships and their experiences with relationships with people that were not from the place that they've been.
Why are we looking at your couch, Sherry?
She's buying us in.
What happened, Paul?
Don't worry, there you go.
I'm getting clever. I'm getting trained by a guru. Anyway, basically it's about the relationships they have. So say, for example, one of the women had met a guy who lived in, let's say, New Jersey, and she lived in England, doing pretty all right for herself. But he came and he wined and dined her. He proposed to her with a massive carrot ring, and then they went to live in New Jersey. And then she was living in their mother's house, and there was rats the size of a cat in London, and finding out that he was a drugs baron and all those sort of things. And every woman in that book has had an experience of love on the wrong side of town. It's quite interesting. Really love it.
Thank you. So, Michael, unmute yourself and let me see what is it you just have to say.
We can't hear.
I'm having in a book club, a book club of men, 12 guys for 20 plus years. We've been through all sorts together. And one of our things, we talk about size of book. Now I'm going to be sexist here. Sorry for this. 800 pages. Now once a month, 800 pages in a month. I'm sorry for this. That is a lady's book.
Listen.
Come on, man.
Took some of us 3 days on our team.
Come on.
It's a book for the year.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't, let me be upfront. I read Don Quixote, which is 1,000. I read that as an intellectual exercise. I said, I'm going to read this. And it wasn't one book. It's about 4 books. So I would just respect here. Maybe that could be condensed into maybe 3 or 4 books of 300 pages. I'm just
to save you time. No, I don't think
it's interesting. Yeah, just for your club. It's interesting you say that, because when the submission came in, obviously it was 110,000 words, which is a lot. Our most extensive book apart from that is an 84,000 word novel, sci-fi novel, written by 13-year-olds in their summer holidays, called Unbreakable. Unbelievable. So when we got this one, 110,000 words, we did suggest, because it is actually in 3 parts, in 3 books, so we did suggest maybe it being a trilogy, but obviously we've got to stick with the author's vision. And when I read the book, I couldn't stop reading it, so I didn't even realize. It was only until we actually got the proof copy, I was like, 810 pages, because I was so into it that I wasn't thinking about pages. I was just thinking, what's going to happen next? You know, so I think there's a time and a place for every book. I mean, personally, I don't think I could personally write that much myself, and I wouldn't read generally 810 page books, you know, on a daily or weekly basis. But I think there's definitely a place for it. There's definitely a place for it.
No, respect for you. You know, having said that, life is too short. I'm at an age now where, you know, 300, 400 pages, I'll commit.
Don't make it sound. Danni,
we'll get it an audio for you.
Danni, we have a question from the Facebook chat.
Hello.
Somebody asked just about what you just mentioned, audiobooks.
Yeah.
What's your view? Do you sometimes get authors to do those?
I think they're great, and it is actually a new service that we're looking into. So many people now are consuming things in so many different ways. I'm very much I love, you know, the book in the hand. That's my thing, you know. But other people prefer Kindle or digital, and audiobooks are huge at the moment. It's such an easy way, you know, if you're on the train or the bus, or if we're allowed to go on them, I don't even know. But, you know, going for a walk, you can easily just listen to it on your headphones. So it's definitely something that we're looking into, and we'll be introducing as a new service as soon as we've cracked it. Yeah, audiobooks, I'm all for it.
Andrew,
getting your nails done.
Andrew, any questions for Danni direct? Because this is not about me today. The show's, you know, about talking to Danni and asking Danni questions.
Okay, I'm not sure if I've yet got to the stage where I would write a book. I can't imagine myself writing a book yet. But when was that moment that you thought, right, I've got to write a book? Beyond the one you wrote for the young child that you was mentoring.
Apart from that one, well, I mean, the first book I started writing is like in my 20s, however long ago that was. But that's the Sherry's gone. That book hasn't been published yet. I am still working on it. But when Mr. Wrong was like one of those things that just happened just very quickly, and it just came from you know, my own personal story. You know, I just remember I had a decade of dating disasters, and my friends would say to me, Dan, how are you meeting these people? What is going on? And it became a bit of a running joke. So they were saying, you've got to write a book. And I said, look, if I meet one more, then I'll write a book. I met one more. So it started off tongue-in-cheek, you know, creating these sketches. But I thought this is actually a deeper journey, because, you know, I put something out there in a blog and I said, is anyone else having these kind of experiences? And I had women from America, Australia, Canada, Jamaica, UK, Europe coming back to me with stories. But I also wanted to create a balanced view and get success stories. And I wanted to hear from men too. So it was about, you know, obviously Mr. Wrong is a tongue-in-cheek title, but it's about, you know, exploring and examining our belief systems that we have about ourselves, love, relationships. You know, there's so many books out there that teach us, you know, especially for women. I don't know if you've read relationship books that are geared towards women, you know, tell us how to be, what to say, how to dress, you know, how to play games even. There's books out there, men, that tell us how to play games to get a man. But nothing that tells us how to love ourselves, how to understand who we really are, you know, how to understand what our values are, how to establish our values, how to demonstrate our values, you know, what our needs, wants, and desires are, the power of forgiveness, the power of intention setting, powers of visualization, power of communication. Nothing like that in these books. And so I wanted to use these stories where we could, you know, share our journey, laugh, cry, but learn from each other without shame. And so it was that message and that why that kind of pushed me forward to, and also to honor these women and the men who contributed these stories, that gave me that impetus to say, right, there's something here and I want to get this out. I had a message. The children's book I'll do, but yeah, I would say I was spurred on by the belief that I had a message, and that message would have an impact on other people who read it.
Good, thank you. Andy, you need to go into the Facebook chat, because a gentleman who listens every week named George Williams apparently needs the author's name for Everything Is Sex.
Needs.
That's all I'm gonna
Urgent.
say. That's the
Yeah,
word he
Every
used.
man.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you for joining us, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Nairobi, thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you, Andrew.
I'm hoping that you will unmute yourself, introduce yourself to our listeners, and ask Danny a question, say what you're here to say.
Well, thank you very much for inviting. I was just hoping to listen, really, listen and learn.
No, it's not that type of show.
Were you looking so aghast?
As Michael has found out, it's not that type of show.
There's so much talent online already. So
Look, there's no such thing as too much talent.
Hi, Nairobi.
hello, my darling. I'm sure we've met actually.
We have. It was we showed your short film at a festival last year, I think. Yes.
That's right. Yes, that's
Remember.
right. Yes. Well done. Thank you very much. I'm flattered. Yes. So I'm Nairobi Thompson. I'm a writer and filmmaker, producer, and cook.
And cook.
I love cooking. I've got to mention the food.
Can we take one? So what book are you reading now?
All right. At the moment, I'm reading After Abolition by Marika Sherwood.
Okay.
And it's looking at the involvement of Britain in the slave trade after abolition. And it's setting the record straight because people tend to think that, after sort of 1833, Britain being one of the first to abolish slavery and, pats on the back for all of that. And everybody else were really sort of rotters and Britain stand up tall, having abolished the slave trade. So this book looks at the level of involvement of the British in the slave trade after the abolition all the way up to the 20th century, looking at government documents, etc. It's a really interesting read, and it shines a lot of light on the policies that people think are brand new, like the new hostile environment, because that's new, isn't it? Because that's never happened before. So it's really a good factual representation of what the British involvement in the slave trade was and thereafter, and the legacy that we're still living with today.
Yeah, it's very important that we widen our scope of reading. Growing up, again, I grew up in a former colony, and the recommended reading that we had was very colonialized. It was very, so it's no surprise that me and my classmates, we read all the so-called classics. We read the Macbeths of this world.
Yes.
I think we read one Chinua Achebe book. We read another one called The Concubine. We read Things Fall Apart. But that was our entire view of anything to do with Africa, with anything to do with anything. My history was very sanitized. It was essentially European history that we were taught, and West Indian history. There was a module on West Indian history, but it never, to be blunt, it never told the truth. Let's be serious. Michael, talk to us about what you're reading immediately now and why you are so psyched up about books. I know you mentioned it, but I can see it's like you're about to explode. What brought you to books in the first place? What brought you?
Well, this is. I'm trying to calm myself down now. That's a huge question, and I don't want to dominate the whole show. I don't want to dominate this show. But look, let me tell you, I am here today because of books, because of Lodge Lane Library in Liverpool, where I could go and get books that could take me away from Liverpool 8 to other places. So books have been an important part of my life. Reading has been really important. And it's fabulous hearing what you guys are using. I'm not alone in this. Books are about escapism. So, right now, I'm reading, is that the right word? I'm reading A Man Called Ove. Hello? By Richard Blackburn. This is one of my book club books. I say there's 12 blokes 12 books, 1 book a month. It's your house. Right now it's your Zoom session.
How many
and we
pages?
it's modest. It's about 400 pages. It's very accessible.
Okay.
You know, it's very accessible, and it's written in nice English. And for me, my big thing, and sorry for this, and I get beaten up for this all the time, I like a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know, a novel that starts, sets the scene, characters, story, and it develops. But the modern novel now is all over the place. You know, it could be in 3 dimensions at that whole frustration. So I'm reading A Man Called Ove, thanks to my book club. And I'll let you tell you this, it's weird, but accessible. It's about a bloke, he's a bloke of my age, an old bloke in his 60s, and he's kind of not set in his ways, but he knows how things should be done. And
Is that what you're calling it?
No, we know how things should be. Paul, you know what I'm talking about.
Set in his ways.
No, not set in his ways. That's not no. But we know this is the better way. We're open to looking at other ways, but at the end of the day, there's one way, and it's normally our way. And it's a book. It's good. It's like that. It's funny. Most of the books we've been reading have been about old men, as you know, as men kind of get older and get more. How can I say this? Not cantankerous, not more difficult.
I think someone on this Zoom would beg to differ.
But you know, well, we've lived it. We've been there, done that. We've ticked that box. You know, and there's books like that. They're kind of life affirming in terms of become this way and enjoy life. Can I just share just a complete change, very brief change of subject? I found this book, No Supper for Eze. This was a book when I traveled many years ago to Nigeria. I brought this back for my son, and I found it just by accident. This book is 30 years old. And those books that you read to your children back in the day, and when they pop up, and I've just had a grandson, the 5th of May, and that's going to be my present to him. You know, the book that I read to your dad 30 years ago, you know, it's just, I know this is me being sentimental. I'm an old man, I can be.
You're allowed to be sentimental. Books are eternal. And that's the quality of a really good book. Nairobi, tell me, you've written a book, I'm assuming. Tell us about your book.
Well, I've written one that I'm not allowed to talk about, as you know.
I was hoping that ban had been listed.
No, that ban has not been listed. So what I can do is I can talk about my experience, but I can't talk about the book entitled Almost British by Olivia Ebanks. Can't talk about that.
We can't talk about that. Just repeat what we can't talk about, sorry.
Almost British. I'm not allowed to talk about that. It's called Almost British. And it's my experience of working in the prison service and the racism that I encountered there in the senior leadership levels. And I took them to court, represented myself for 15 days and won rulings against them. So the book is about that experience, how my own awakening, if you will, how it impacted me, what I did about it, and how I sort of I made my way, navigated my way through a very political landscape, and that was fraught with obstacles of collusion and conspiracy and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. And that's what led me into writing. To be fair, I didn't consider myself to be a writer. Although I had a good grasp of literature, like yourself, Paul, brought up on the classics, etc., but never once thought to myself, oh, right, you must write a book. But it was the most convenient medium to convey my story. It was a cathartic experience for me to be able to do it in that way. And then once I'd started writing, I found that I couldn't stop. And so the second book that I wrote is a book of poetry, and it's supported with academic references as well, about the contributions made by African and Caribbean people to World War I and World War II. And again, I'm referencing documents and archival information that demonstrates the level of our contribution. The poetry, however, is written through our lens, having interviewed veterans and looked up archival material, and just really trying to put myself in that space and create a piece of work that is through our lens and not written about us by other people. Yeah. So, and I've got a number of chapbooks out as well, as you know, that cover the sensual and erotic writing, again through our lens.
Now you're gonna let George.
Where's Andrew?
You're gonna let George.
I've just ordered Everything is Sex.
Yeah.
Let George have a heart attack. Danny, you know what? Just give us an idea of what the advantages of coming to someone like yourself. What's the advantage of coming to a service like yours? I know them. You know, I've experienced your services. I'm very, very grateful. I think you'll remember that when we were finished, I told you you're too cheap. You should up your prices.
Oh, that's happened.
Good. Because I felt the services were outstanding, and I felt everything was pretty good on that level. But for those who don't know, give them an idea. You know, because there's some people there who they may have a manuscript put down, or they may have a book in their head. So what type of services for that person who has a manuscript put down or has it in their head? What does Conscious Dream Publishing offer?
So we offer a wide range of things. We offer publishing services, mentoring services, and workshops. So workshops are usually for those who have an idea but they haven't quite got it down. They might need help with structure. They might help with looking at the bigger vision. Publishing services are for those who finish their first draft and they're ready to go. Again, we're not just about printing a book. Like I say, some of these vanity publishers are, I call them printers. And one of the things that breaks my heart is when I speak to people and I do the 30-minute consultations, and I'll say, have you published a book before? Yes, I have. How's it doing? Where is it? Has it sold? How many copies have you sold? Well, I have. It's just on Amazon. Amazon's just one channel out of thousands of places you could sell it. So what breaks my, and then I'll ask them, have you promoted it? Oh no, not really. I don't really use social media. But if you're self-publishing, and Nairobi, you'd know this, like you've got to be the biggest advocate for your book. There's no one out there that's going to sell or get your book out there better than you can. So we really help authors, we don't just print a book. I'm in touch with most of my authors still. If any opportunities come up, I'll always let them know and think about referring them to people. But it's about creating a vision for the books. Anyone, as you know, can publish a book, print a book, write a book. It's got to be good. It's got to be professional. So we make sure it's of a professional standard. So 3 of the main reasons why people don't publish is, number 1, lack of knowledge. It's almost like you're climbing a mountain. So you're right here writing a book, which is hard enough as it is. And then like this idea of publishing almost seems too hard. So people just don't bother because they think that journey is so much. I don't even know how I'm going to do it. Let me just stop, because it's a big investment writing a book, like personally, emotionally, in every way possible. So we provide the knowledge and we just take you along and we literally do everything for you, but it's tailored to your vision. So I'm very much about, as Nairobi, you said, we have to tell our own story, not somebody else, not under someone else's gaze. So what I'm passionate about is make sure that we keep the author's voice, the authentic voice and authentic story, and we'll make sure that it's edited and polished properly. So we'll take them through the designs, mentor them through the process, help them think about the bigger vision. So again, it's not just about publishing the book, it's about what retailers you want to get your book into. If you're in a book for children, we've got lots of children's authors here, what else could you have off the back of it? One of our authors has got a board game and a song that goes along with her book. She's going into schools and doing workshops. Our young Mikkel here, she's going into schools. We're going to get her into schools when they open again, doing workshops, running her own thing behind it. You know, if you're writing a book for your business, are you going to create an online course off the back of your book? You know, what press do you want to get? What radio interviews do you want to get? There's so much to publishing a book. It's almost like having a baby. The first year of your book's life is so important. If you push a book out there and you neglect it and you leave it, it's not going to grow, you know. So we're just about not publishing books, but mentoring and nurturing you through that process and thinking about the bigger vision in terms of opportunity.
I have to ask this question before I get Michael to chip in with something. Just a quick question, Danny. And, you know, it occurred to me when the whole self-publishing world erupted and, you know, we had access to this print on demand and all of that. And I won't pretext it. I'll just ask you, do you think self-publishing has seen a fall or a rise in the quality of books that's going out?
Oh, the quality, that's interesting. There's definitely been a rise of self-publishers out there. I mean, 58% of the ebooks out there are actually self-published books. I don't know if I can comment on the quality because I'm not really looking at other self-published authors and what they're doing this, because there's so many different versions. I would say that there has been a rise in the quality of self-publishing in the sense that there's a third strand. So you've got traditional publishing, yeah, the query letter. Then you've got the middle, which is what we do, which is hybrid publishing or partnership publishing / self-publishing. Okay. Then you've got self-publishing. So the hybrid publishing is very much about working with the company, making sure that it's professional, having that, you know, guidance and support and producing something of worth and of value. But then you've still got the self-publishing, you know, what people used to call vanity publishers. They're still there. You know they're still there because when you were looking for your book, and then people that I've spoken to, they've gone to these companies. These companies are still there. They're still going to operate. They're always going to operate. But I think my hope is that more and more self-published authors will start to wake up and realize, actually, I need to invest in doing this properly. Yeah. I do think as well, there are a lot of people now, they're, you know, researching and seeing the rise of self-published authors. There are a lot of people who are doing it themselves, but not doing it properly. And it just breaks my heart. So I think it's a twofold question. Yes, there's a rise of people who are literally DIYing it themselves, you know, self-publishing, but with that comes a lack of quality. If you're not investing in the right designers, you're not investing in the right editors. So many times I've spoken to people, it's like, oh yeah, I published a book a few years ago, have you edited it? Yeah. Has it been done professionally? Oh, I just got my friend to look at it. No, like you've got to look at, do you know what I mean? It's the most frustrating thing. Like, your book is your baby, and don't just go to an editor, go to a book editor, and don't just go to a book editor, go to an editor who is like specialized in that genre. Like, invest in what you're doing. It's so important. I'm really passionate about it. It really does upset me. So I don't know I don't know the stats, whether there's been a rise, but it's definitely still happening. Yeah.
You know, you talk about passion.
Oh, Naomi.
Before I go to Mr. Passion himself about books, quickly, you were going to say?
Yeah, just on the back of what Daniela was saying, I think she's absolutely right. The vanity publishers, I've got somebody chasing me right now. I don't know where they got my number from, but they just keep calling. But in terms of the quality, I think when I was ready to publish my first book, I just had no clue what to do next.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the vanity publishers kind of corner the market, if you will, because they present themselves as partners when in reality they're really not. They're not really editing your book for you. They're not helping you to produce a professional and a polished product at the end of the day. They will virtually print whatever you write, however good, bad, or indifferent it is. And then and tell you that it will be everywhere. And it's just it's a struggle when you think it, if you've not been taught to write, you know, you've not done creative writing, and you know, you've not got a degree in creative writing. And what happened to me was I had a story to tell. I didn't know that it was going to open doors to writing other things.
Yeah.
For me, it was just a standalone. This is what I was compelled to write this story. I felt it would help others, and as I said, it was cathartic for me to do. But then it's like, where do you go? What do you do? And it's that sort of mystery around publishing, and then the snobbery around traditional publishing routes as well, that dissuade people from taking that route, or even realizing that there's a route,
that's the word,
partnership route that Daniela has.
Yeah, that is definitely the word, snobbery.
Yeah.
Michael, I want you to talk to me about the Black British Past, that book, but I also, before, because we're going to have to wrap up soon, I also want you to mention where you are from in terms of Colourful FM and the work you do there.
Okay, very briefly, this is the book. I've just had my first chapter in this book published, and it's on my big project. My big project there. Can you see it there? And that's my big project, johnblank.com. That's me. Check that out.
How many pages? That looks a bit thick, mate.
No, I've only got a chapter. I've got a chapter in the book.
Yeah, but the book itself looks a bit thick, though.
How many pages is it?
No, that's the beauty. It's episodic. That's important. Chunks. You can read a bit, done. Read a bit, done. But you want the whole book? No, it's too difficult. Look, So look, Daniela, we have to talk. I'm working on 2 books right now, which I'm about to self-publish. But I've been fired up by what you've been saying there about having that third eye, that extra eye. So as a minimum, you've got to DM me. As a maximum, you've got to tell the world, your access details.
I shall. Thank you so much. I'm putting my details in the chat box now, and I'll put it on the Facebook one with my website. I'm offering free 30-minute consultations, so book in. I'll put it in now.
Bring it up. Okay, 2 books. That's an hour then. I've got an hour with you. No. We'll talk about that.
30 minutes. 30 minutes. How many? It depends on how many pages your book is as well. So.
They're very thin. No, Paul, I think this is fantastic. An opportunity to share ideas in a relaxed, enthusiastic environment. In terms of what I do, well, I see myself as a cultural historian. I'm into Black British history. That's what I'm about. Celebrating Black British history, talking about it, redefining it, making it more accessible. Because my obsession is that it wasn't the Windrush in 1948 or whatever it was, but we've been here forever. And it's unpicking that presence. And there's books, stories, all kinds of stuff that have been told, like Marika's book you've mentioned, and there's things that I'm working on that make us here. Because I think, we're part of British culture. You can't get away from us. We're here. So I'm looking for books that mention that kind of reflect the fact that we're here. So that's what I'm obsessed with. Thank you for that, Paul.
Okay, look, last question, Michael, before we wrap up for Michael.
Okay.
Yeah. Favorite genre?
Oh no. Okay, hang on. Okay, can I be really boring? I love art books. Look at this. This is Fashika, Carmen Fashika's book. This is the Black presence in 16th century Spanish art. I love it. I talk about it. I rant about it. Look at this. This is Rembrandt and Blacks, an exhibition in Amsterdam, was just being closed. I love it. I talk about it. And then look at this. This is an interesting book. These are live books now. This is by Alice Proctor about this. She's a radical kind of white historian talking about art in British history, which has been stolen. The Benin bronzes and all that kind of stuff. She writes about that. So those are the things I'm reading and write about.
Look, Michael, lovely. So glad you could join us this afternoon, and we will keep our little reading thing going because it's a very important.
Definitely.
Robbie, what's your genre of choice and your wrapping up statement where people can find the books that are allowed and anything else that you do?
No, that's to me.
No.
Or if you go,
your time finished now, Don.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
I love Michael's passion, Paul.
It's Nairobi's time now.
I'm gone.
It's my time now. My time now, Michael. Ease up, Michael. Ease up.
Nairobi, it's all your.
Oh, yes, then.
Well, again, I'm fascinated by all things African and the diasporic voice right across the globe. So even if it's factual, if it's as in facts and figures and data and information, if it's art, I'm just fascinated because I'm hungry. I was starved of it for like 30 odd years, and I'm just finding stuff out now, and that's what keeps me passionate. So I'm reading books like I told you, like abolition. I'm reading erotica. I read everything as long as it's through our lens, because that's what I'm missing. It feels like it's a missing part of me, that I've got to understand the history. I've got to understand the art and all the creativity around our contributions and who we are and what makes us so beautiful, so resilient, so intelligent, so so ingenious, that around the globe there's this concerted effort to keep us down and to obliterate our contributions. So I'm lifting all the covers and I want to see what's going on. And in terms of what I'm writing at the moment, I'm putting a collection of erotic poetry together. You only get it at my shows at the moment, so there's nothing out there apart from the chat box that you can pick up at my shows, because I'm being told that there is nothing like it out there at the moment. So I've got to seize that opportunity. And I'm also writing I've just written a children's book, and I've just had all the illustrations done again about, it's called Conscious Playtime. And it's just that awakening of two young girls playing with dolls that look like them, and the conversation that they're having as a result of being represented.
Thank you so much for that. And thanks for joining us. Daniela, the last word will go to yours. There's no time restriction on what this last word looks like. I think I'd like you to share some words of inspiration again for those people who may have that book in mind and are apprehensive. How would you inspire them? And more importantly, so that George will get off my case on Facebook, let me know how people can contact you. One of the gentlemen, Errol is in New York. He's asked also about how they can contact you. I know you'll post it in the talk, but just to make these two guys stop hounding me, make sure you wrap up with your contact details.
I will do. Before I answer, can I just talk about just a few other books? So off the back of what Nairobi said, just having books that tell our stories through our lens, really important. Beautiful book here called Ariza. It's actually written by our editor, her father, who's from Zimbabwe. And it's based on, I'm going to read this. Ariza is a quietly ambitious, self-assured girl living in a small village, Chena, in rural 1960s Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia, where family is everything and everything is family. So she ends up moving to England and then goes back to Zimbabwe. And it looks at the history behind it. And it looks at, through the lens of the Zimbabwean woman experiencing both worlds and duality. Hey, Faye! Her own experience of seeing her country shattered and changing, and the transformations that happen within. So that's this one. We've also got one of my favorites. I do have some favorites, apart from yours, Paul, of course. Niger Love Stories, written by Ola Nubi. She's got a couple of other books out as well. She's been traditionally published. It's really short, humorous, poignant stories, short stories based on all the different kind of experience of love. So we're not talking about romantic love necessarily. It's all about connection. Beautiful, beautiful book. And then on to my favorite. One of my favorites is children's books. We've got another one here called The Mysterious Melody, and it's based on these two twins. Come on, their names now. Nanuso, there's so many. Nanuso and Shingan, they live in England, but they're struggling with this duality of being British but not feeling British, So speaking Shangri at home and then having to speak English in the classroom. So it's about understanding those two different cultures. And so they go on an adventure and they trying to remember. My words are gone. They explore the Zimbabwean heritage. That's it. Then we've also got another one, Renee's Magical Wellington Books here, and Mum, I Want to Pee. And then we've got the Black British Colouring Book. We've got number 1, volume 1 and volume 2. Both came out in October 2018, October 2019. And again, I don't have favourites, but these ones are really close to my heart, because whenever we do any kind of stalls, the kids just gravitate to this. And what I love about this, we had an event in October called Black Authors on the Rise, and it was in relation to these stats that had come out through Reflecting Realities, which says that 1%, only 1% of protagonists in children's fiction are from what we're known as BAME categories, which has now risen to 5%. Only 7% are background characters. To me, that's not acceptable. And that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that we have our image, because like, you know, Obi, I couldn't see my image. Everything was through the dominant culture. Everything was through the lens of someone other, which subconsciously makes you feel in your mind that you're invisible. You're not important. It doesn't matter. And that, again, that links to getting, you know, being rejected by these agents and everything else. If you allow these subconscious belief systems or whatever it is, conditioning to play, then we'll start to believe that we're nothing. We'll start to believe we're not important. And what I love about these books is that after we had an event, there were like little 4-year-olds coming up to the author and saying, do you think I can be in a colouring book one day? You know, I want to be an author. Do you think I can be an author? It's like, absolutely, yes, you know. And for me, linking back when I was 4, I always wanted to be an author. It's because that's what I loved doing. But it wasn't until I got older, I started to see the authors that I was reading, you know, Topsy and Tim, Jane and Peter, all of these books, you know what I mean? I started to subconsciously think, well, I can't be an author because I can't see anyone that looks like me, you know? So it wasn't until it was my passion that kind of drove me through getting this. And I think me giving back is just being able to give us a platform for us to share our stories. And we published everyone and anyone. Obviously, they've got to be in alignment with what we're about. But I'm especially passionate about making sure our image is out there and that we share our stories, and that young people know they don't have those limitations. That young people know that it's more than possible and our image matters. So that's my message about that. What was your question?
Well, what was the question? Well, I think the only question is, you know, I know you're going to put it in the feed, but how can people contact you in terms of, is it Facebook, is it Insta? How can people contact you?
Well, you can contact me through my website, www.consciousdreamspublishing.com. I've put that in the chat box. You can also connect with me on Facebook under Danni Blechner. I'm on Instagram, Conscious Dreams Publishing. You can also book a free 30-minute consultation. I've put the link in the chat box as well. My email is info@Conscious Dreams Publishing. And if you want to publish a book, if there's anything on your heart right now, if you've been wanting to write a book for however long, life's too short. Just get out there and do it. Yeah,
you know, I just want to thank Nairobi for joining us. Michael, definitely Andrew earlier. Sherry, I know you had to drop off. And Daniela, look, I'm not quite sure what I thought I was setting out to do when I started to do these lives on a Sunday. But I have to say it's brought me a lot of pleasure doing them. And today, being able to talk about books, which is like a silent passion, you know, right after Star Trek, there's books, yeah. And it's nice to see that we have that shared passion. And, you know, that they, you know, all these little things they talk about, hiding things from Black people, you put it in a book and all of that sort of derogatory stuff. It's just not the case. And it's a wonderful vibe to be among people who are strong readers, who read widely and read a range of stuff. For myself, I just want to say thank you to everybody, not just the people who joined me today live on Zoom, but also the people who joined me in the chat. You guys are great. You know, Andrew, it was really nice for you to make that step. You know, Andrew has the record of always joining the live first, and it was nice that he made the step to come onto the Zoom itself. As has been happening in the last few, we're past our time. But again, no one pays me to be on it, so it's my time and your time. Thank you so much. Everybody who's listening, next week, Sunday, we are going to be here again at 2 p.m. UK time. Same page, www.facebook.com/IdolYardie. If you don't know the story behind the Idol Yardie name, you'll get that on another day. What I do want to let people know is that we have a channel now up on YouTube where I transfer all the videos to, and I'll be able to post from time to time some of the back catalog of what we're building up so people can see stuff, and you can be able to share the link with people who didn't get to see it live. The last thing is I want to prepare everybody for the week before Father's Day. So the Sunday before Father's Day, I want to have a special Father's Day Zoom live people talk special. And so it will be very, very much focused on the role of fathers in the community, the good, the bad, the indifferent. But I wanted to do something very special. I don't want to do it on Father's Day Sunday, obviously, even though we're on lockdown. I think for many people, their attention may be elsewhere. But certainly that's what we're going to do. And as Danny already knows, I am planning to do my second book. And my second book will be on fatherhood. And so in the next few days, weeks, I'll be contacting a few people to do contributions to that book, because obviously, hey, I'm an engineer. I'm not a writer. Never was, never proclaimed to be. Danny, was that a finger to say something?
It was. Yeah, I was doing what Michael did. Please, sir. Will you be in, when you do your second book, will you be in our next Don't Rush video? Because you didn't make the first one.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. And that's it from me. You know.
Thank you.
I'll see you all next week. Danny, bad girl. Bad girl.
Got ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.